Empathy is that skill set to be able to understand other people. And of course, in advertising and marketing, we've been doing that for decades. But I feel in recent years, perhaps the shift to how we understand people, particularly with the digital world, has changed a little bit. And maybe there's now a bit of a renaissance. I would argue that that is the role of a planner, right? Of a strategist.
Yeah.
To be that person in a team or an agency that says, this is who this person is, and this is how they're going to behave around our product. I think that's super important as well, is that empathy in this world is not just about marketers empathizing with their audience, but the audience empathizing with those brands. It costs more, both in resource and in finances, to build authenticity, to build a relationship. If you and I wanted to become really good friends, we can't do it in one podcast studio, right? We would have to see each other every month, engage and invest. And it's the same from a brand.
This episode is brought to you by SeedTag, the global contextual advertising company. SeedTag uses cutting-edge AI to place your ads directly within the content your audience loves, whether it's sports, lifestyle, or entertainment. It's all about making your brand a natural part of the experience. Their contextual AI analyzes content in real time, ensuring your ads are shown in the right place at the right time, without relying on personal data or intrusive tracking. Plus, with stunning premium visuals, SeedTag helps your brand stand out in all the right ways. So if you're ready to take your advertising to the next level, check out the link in the description and visit seedtag.com to learn more. Mimi Nicklin.
Hello.
Welcome to Below the Fold podcast.
I've been waiting for this.
I am so excited to have you on the show.
Thank you.
And to discuss your expertise on an important subject matter, which is empathy.
It is.
And little do people know, or probably they know, or little did I know when I met you, is that you actually have an advertising and marketing experience.
I do.
And I'm really excited to hear you speak about empathy in the marketing,
Yes.
I guess, space, right?
That's cool.
And we agreed today that we'll talk about empathy in two parts.
Okay.
So this will be 2 episodes,
Amazing.
right? Podcast recording.
Double the fun.
Let's go. The first one, the first part will be about empathy as a marketing compass, building connections, authenticity, and innovations. So
Okay.
before we get started, why don't you give the listeners and the viewers a bit of an introduction about yourself?
Yes, so you're right. I specialize in empathy in all areas of life, predominantly in leadership. So why do we need more connection, more belonging in the world, and of course in our workplaces? And as you quite rightly said, I came from 15 years of advertising communications. My dad was an ad man, and that was my entire life for a very long time. And it led me to much of the work I do today.
Very nice. And when did you jump to
Jump ship.
focusing, I guess, on empathy?
About 5 years ago, this journey began in around 2019.
Yeah.
But I didn't actually leave my agency. So I had a branding business until November last year. So
right.
I had been double hatting. I think you said to me when I came in, if you're not hustling, there's no hustle, something like that.
Yeah.
I definitely hustled. So I've been doing both, and I still do quite a lot of brand strategy work now. So
Right.
it will never totally leave me.
Yeah. And I'm excited to hear what you have to offer or to say, right, on using empathy in marketing. Obviously, in leadership is very relevant, right, for all the CMOs, I believe, and the leaders in the marketing industry that are listening to this. This is very, very relevant for you, right? Let's start with the first segment, right, of this first part.
Okay.
On empathy, which is empathy as a strategic compass, right? Why is empathy more than just a nice to have in marketing?
Because if you don't understand who you're selling to, how are you ever going to sell to them? So
Right.
I think fundamentally, the more you understand what empathy is, which is perspective taking at its simplest, right? The ability to understand how someone else sees, thinks, or experiences perhaps the same reality as you. So your listeners, for example, they're all seeing the same scene, but they will all take away something different, something that resonates, something they like, something they don't like. Empathy is that skill set to be able to understand other people. And of course, in advertising and marketing, we've been doing that for decades. But I feel in recent years, perhaps the shift to how we understand people, particularly with the digital world, has changed a little bit. And maybe there's now a bit of a renaissance around really understanding empathy and what empathy is in branding, which is just the ability to really understand What is your product's role in their lives? Why do they want it? How are they going to use it, right? So fundamentally, it's around insight. I think probably the core to all insight is empathy.
Right. So as a planner, let's say,
Yep.
I need to plan for a particular product launch. Let's say I have at my disposal a number of data sources that
Yep.
I'm going to use to understand my target audience. What is empathy's role in that sort of scenario? Is it maybe digging a little bit more insights, or is it, I guess, like you said, maybe perhaps trying to understand what would tick, I guess, the box for a customer, right? What would make them happy?
Yeah, and we live in a world where there's so much data, which is phenomenally powerful. And I often say on stage that empathy is data. It's human data. So I think as a planner or as a strategist, when you're looking at all those data sources, I often use, when I'm doing strategic work, something called empathy mapping, which is a tool, like if you don't know it, Google it, super interesting, which fundamentally just lets you into their world and says, with all of this data I have available, how do I understand what they're seeing, what they're hearing, what they're doing, what they want? So really standing in their shoes. You might have heard that before, Ibrahim, when people say that empathy is to stand in the shoes of others. I would argue that that is the role of a planner, right, of a strategist.
Yeah.
To be that person in a team or an agency that says, this is who this person is, and this is how they're going to behave around our product. So it's fundamentally the map of their life, really.
Right, because ultimately it's how a customer or an audience would appreciate your message.
I think so.
Right, it's not
Yeah.
just getting in front of the end audience or the end user. It's getting in front of them in a way that what you're proposing has some form of value to them, right?
Or resonance, right? It's when you see an ad or a piece of communication, or you engage with a brand experience and you feel something about it. For me, that's when you know that there's really high empathy in that experience, right? I feel that this was meant for me. It's when you watch an ad that makes you laugh or cry or feel any level of emotion. It's because it's resonant to you. You have empathy with them and they have empathy with you. And I think that's super important as well, is that empathy in this world is not just about marketers empathizing with their audience, but the audience empathizing with those brands.
Right, it's a two-way street.
It's a two-way street.
Can you think of a brand that has somehow nailed it?
I think Airbnb, probably. I was
Yeah.
recently actually in Sydney, and I presented to an audience, a customer audience, actually, a customer insight show. And I used Airbnb there. And the more I dug into them and even their branding, right, the way they created their logo, like if you read up on it on Google, it's fascinating how they built empathy into that emblem that they have and that connection to humans in there. Just the way that they communicate, they talk a lot about belonging. And in my work, a lot of my time is taken up talking about belonging, talking about loneliness, talking about the role of human connection, which is fundamental to us because we're a pro-social species, right? So we need to connect to survive, not to thrive, but to survive.
Yeah.
And I think Airbnb has it nailed. You know, they have belonging at the heart of everything they do. And if you kind of get your head around the fact that they are probably one of the biggest hospitality brands in the world and they don't own a single piece of real estate. You know, when it started, you probably don't remember, you're far too young, but when Airbnb first started, people were like, there is no way I'm going to stay in someone else's house, like a stranger's house.
Yeah.
But they built that brand in such a way and said, you belong here.
Yeah.
There is belonging in literally from their logo to their experience. So I think they're a really high empathy brand.
That's a great example, actually. I could tell from the logo that it's somehow heartwarming from the shape
Right,
of it,
the shape.
right? And the color.
Yeah,
as
it's
well.
very warm. It
Yeah.
feels human.
Yeah.
And if you watch their kind of manifesto videos and stuff on YouTube, you'll see there's a lot in there around humanity, diversity, community. Yeah, they're a very empathic brand.
That's a great example. Thanks, Mimi. Let's jump on to the next one.
Yep.
Building authentic relationships.
Okay.
Right? Why is authenticity so rare in today's marketing
Oh
landscape to start with?
Why is it so rare? I wish it wasn't. Do you mean from a brand point of view?
Yeah. And how does empathy, I guess, help brands, right, move beyond, transactional relationships, right, to build genuine connections?
Look, I think it's funny when you ask senior marketers if they understand and value the role of emotional connection, the role of authenticity in the relationships with their customers, of course they're going to say yes. But we are living in a world that is driven by the P&L, right? We are living in such a tight financial system that in many areas, not just marketing, but in many areas, we have lost our ability to kind of see the wood for the trees. Everything is a run, to the double-digit growth this quarter, next quarter, every quarter. And that, of course, creates inauthenticity. It creates it in our relationships, in our teams. So if you ask many of your colleagues in the industry about how they feel in their workplace, I would bet 8 out of 10 of them will tell you it used to be more creative. It used to be more fun. We have less team members doing more work. Our clients run us with procurement in mind rather than creativity in mind, right? So the industry is under such pressure. And you just have to look at the way that agencies are consolidating, what's happening at a group level to see that, that there's so much more pressure on every dollar that we're spending.
Yeah.
We have to be really, really choiceful. And often that will lead brands and marketers to spending on short-termism. Right. So to spending on, promotions to drive immediate volume uplift because the board is demanding it. This quarter, I need to see X growth and X product. Yeah. It will sell. But are you building an authentic relationship? No. But we're living through a cost of living crisis. So, reduce the prices or put them on promo. People will buy your product. But is that authenticity? No. Will they remember you past the sale, past the promotion? Perhaps not. Are you driving non-swapping behavior? Unlikely.
Right.
So I think fundamentally it all comes back to the economy and the world that we're living in and just the pressure that we have on every marketing dollar. It costs more, both in resource and in finances, to build authenticity, to build a relationship. If you and I wanted to become really good friends, we can't do it in one podcast studio, right? We would have to see each other every month, engage and invest. And it's the same from a brand.
Right. And I guess one of the areas is active listening, respond meaningfully, right? Yeah. To pain points or challenges when it comes to, I guess, drifting away from authenticity.
Yeah. And it takes time.
Yeah.
Right. I actually recently presented to a client, a bank in the UK, a financial institution in the UK called Monzo, who believe very much in mental health and the mental well-being of their customers. And when you look into what they're doing as a brand, that authenticity is so deep that they actually have in their customer service team, on the end of the phone or on the end of a chatbot, wherever you're speaking, they have mental health specialists within that team. And it says on their site, it says everywhere, if you want to talk to us about more than your transaction or your overdraft or whatever it is you need to talk to your bank about, these are the people to do that.
Yeah.
And you can actually have an open conversation and say, dear bank team, I'm an incredibly anxious person. I need a little bit more patience when I'm talking about my finances. Please bear with me. Right? Yeah. But they've hired people. They've trained people. They've invested in people.
Yeah.
To create that authentic relationship. And it's a commitment.
And even if it doesn't resolve, I suppose, the customer's issue, it sends a strong message, right, to the audience that, hey, we're here, right? We have this for you. We went the extra mile.
Yeah. And it's so rare now because everybody's in a rush, right? Empathy has two great enemies, Ibrahim. One is low time and the other is high stress.
Yeah.
And if you ask your audience, put your hand up. If you have low time and high stress, everyone, including the marketers, will say yes.
Fantastic. Third segment.
Yes.
Of this part one.
Yep.
Empathy episode.
Part one, part three.
Part one, segment 3. Driving creativity and innovation. So how does empathy fuel creativity and innovation in marketing? Or maybe another question, why do empathetic, the tablet got a little bit too empathetic, I suppose.
Too excited.
Why do empathetic organizations see a 48% increase in innovation?
Yeah, it's super, super powerful. I think in the end, all creativity and innovation has to come from a place of what I would call psychological safety, an environment where your team members feel able to create, feel able to say, I've got this idea. It might be rubbish, but let's have a look at it. You have to have a safe culture, a connected, empathetic culture within your agency or your marketing team to encourage innovation. Innovation can only come from risk taking, right? All innovation is a risk, and all brands need to innovate because otherwise you can't grow. So fundamentally, the core to all innovation and actually to all creativity is empathy.
Right.
We need to feel as creatives that we belong, that we're safe in our position and our role and the room that we're in to be able to get to true creativity.
Right.
How often you hear creative people say, I had this amazing idea when I was running or in the shower or, you know, on a plane, somewhere where they just felt at ease, at peace, to let their brain open up.
Yeah.
And for me as a writer, as an author, all of my best ideas come in those moments, not when I'm running between podcast studios, right?
Yeah.
But when I'm, I don't know, sitting on the plane, more often than not, Emirates is probably responsible for most of my ideas, right?
Yeah.
So you have to have psychological safety. You have to have belonging as a human being to be able to create.
Yeah, that's a really good point. If you think about the top 5 places of where your ideas arise, of where you think of these innovative ideas, how many times is a meeting room part of these five places?
Very rarely.
Very rarely.
Maybe never.
Maybe never. This is why it's very important that whoever is in command of that meeting room at that time needs to make sure that the space is empathetic.
Yes.
Right? It's safe. It's safe to people to feel like they're under the shower, I suppose.
Yeah.
Or maybe, running in order for them to feel comfortable enough, right? To think of innovative ideas.
Yeah. If you're worried that your boss or your team are going to chastise you, laugh at you, tell you off, criticize you, you're never going to say that idea. Right? You're never, because it's a risk.
Yeah.
But in the end, Ibrahim, nothing wonderful ever came from a comfort zone. Right? Risk leads to creativity.
Right.
But in order to create an environment of risk, ironically, you have to start with safety.
Right. This was very insightful. I'm very glad we were able to cover
that was like speed dating for branding.
It was, and I'm sure all these listeners out there that are very busy would appreciate this level of agility.
The short masterclass.
Yeah. Mimi, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
For our listeners and viewers out there, just look forward, I guess, or wait for the second part.
Yep.
That's gonna come, right after this, that Mimi and I will record. And thanks a lot, Mimi. On to the next one.
Thanks so much for having me.